All right, friends. Looks like we got a big group coming in. It's so awesome of you all to join us. We got people from all over. Why don't we start this way? I know we're getting ready to get officially started here in just a moment, but I'm wondering if you would be willing to drop in your location in the chat. Let's hear from you all, and I'd like to know where you're coming from. You can tell from my country boy accent, I am not in Minnesota. That's where the rest of our folks are in Minnesota. I am in Huntington, West Virginia.
I was going to say Wisconsin.
I know, no, that it.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. We
Sure,
are Marshall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you guys remember the We Are Marshall movie, that's home for me. We've got people coming from all over. Great movie. Yeah, you're right, Marissa. It was a fun movie. I was here. I actually graduated from Marshall the year that they filmed that. All right. Look at all those folks coming from all over Texas,
Nice.
California, Missouri. Well, I'll tell you what, it is 1 minute after. I am going to go ahead and get us started. And Kate, I know you can hear me. If you'll maybe just monitor the waiting room and let folks in. It looks like our enrollment is still climbing. And here's the good thing. I'm not a coffee guy, but I'm a Starbucks guy. I'm a hot chocolate kind of guy. So everybody that's participating in the call today, of course, we're going to be sending out coffee gift cards. I think it's Starbucks. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Wherever it is, I'm sure it's going to be delicious. We've got a lot of cool things to talk about. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that we were kind of over the hump as it relates to distance and blended learning. And it turns out we are definitely not. There is still a huge demand for two things. One, the right technology to connect with our audience, our student audience out on the far end. It is sometimes it's the very same things that we would set up technology wise in a classroom. Sometimes it's not. And so we have the right expertise on the call today to kind of have that conversation on getting the right technology in place to facilitate that hybrid and distant learning environment, right? On the flip side of that same coin, we also have to empower people. I am a firm believer that we can have all the technology that AVer and Trafera and Newline and all of these partners, we can put it all in a big room, and it's not going to do us any good if we don't also empower the educators that are the ones that are going to be using this day in and day out to connect with students. And I'm deeply passionate about that side of it. So we have all the right people in the room to have this conversation. And I actually want to start with a gentleman who I've actually, let me back up one little bit and let's do introductions real quick. Carl, you're first on my list. So why don't you just take a quick second, introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
Thanks, Joshua. My name is Carl Harvell. I am the Director of Product Marketing at AVer USA. Pretty much working with the video cameras, distance learning, and K-12 group.
Gotcha. Thanks for being here, Carl. Next on my list, I see Eric.
Hi, team. My name is Eric Wells, and I am currently Director of Southwest Region Services for Trafera. And before that, I'm going to be speaking about some of my experiences at Muskogee Public Schools as COO.
Thanks, Eric, for being here. Tim, can you do a quick introduction?
I can. I apologize. You'll see me when it's really my turn to talk for real, but my name is Tim Garber, and I am, in fact, from Newline Interactive. We make interactive displays, and I am one of the trainers here. My job is to make sure that our teachers get the guidance they need so they can effectively leverage this technology in the classroom, regardless of their scenario.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Eric, I was wondering if you would get us started. I know we haven't went over the details of this, but this is our preparation. I know we kicked around a couple of ideas. There's people on the call that are concerned about making sure that the right technology is in place. I know you've been through this at Muskogee, and you're probably working on it now quite a bit in the Oklahoma City project. So would you be willing to kind of open up the conversation, talk about the technologies that you've experienced and some of the things that you're deploying now in terms of connecting in a hybrid environment?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. And first, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt or please put those in the chat. I want to make this as two-way, five-way, how many communications you want to have going. So please feel free. As Josh mentioned, in my previous experiences at Muskogee Schools as COO and currently working with Jafera to oversee a project in Oklahoma City of 2,000 IFPs and classroom remodels. It's been quite an experience to work through COVID, especially as we come back to the Delta variant. One of our biggest choices, especially at Muskogee with our 400 panel implementation, was our teacher tech choices. And what it came down to is it was a total different evaluation process than what it was before. And anyone in the tech world will understand this, usually price and functionality, usually, drive the system. Well, in this case, that was not the case. It was what can we get in time and what will the staff use? Having those two criteria to be our driving force really kind of changed our game a little bit. And it made for a very interesting deployment. As we know, of course, we have AVer and Newline with us now, and that is one piece of a big ecosystem, if you will, for a pivot to home or a hybrid learning environment. Of course, with a couple of student device problems, internet access, MDM, stuff to go home with, LMS systems, you name it. We went through several of these different iterations of projects and deployments and whatnot, but just wanted to focus on a few things as we went home with the hybrid environments. Of course, we did land with a solution that is very easy for staff to use to be able to basically sit at their desk or sit at home. And so one interesting thing that we did was every staff member was issued a laptop, but they also have a Newline panel and AVer, both in some environments, to be able to pivot to home, so to say. And so while students and teachers both may be at home with COVID on leave due to exposure or even sick, the teachers actually either taught at school or taught at home. And so we did make mobile classrooms for teachers to take home for them to teach from their own houses. It did work quite well, but doing that, it took lots of technology pieces to make it happen. One very interesting fact that we had come up in the beginning was the streaming classes across our LMS system. Some of those classes were open. I will say that one big issue we had with that, and this is just note for everybody, and it may be different state to state, this was in Oklahoma, but we were not allowed to show our students on camera at any time. And so that made things very difficult as we had a camera facing the whiteboard and chalkboard combo to face the classroom with audio on it. So when a student raised their hand, the students could not say their names. So just some interesting things like that came across the plate as we moved into this system. But needless to say, as we went home, as most tech directors can relate, we were more prepared than, say, our staff was. And as Josh mentioned earlier, PD becomes the biggest part of this. And as we know, it gets bigger every year. And so even in our own districts, we have staff members who did teach through the pandemic last year, but we also have 25% of our staff members now who are brand new and have not taught in a hybrid mixed environment at all. And so it's super important for us as we look to school leaders to be able to engage in that PD, because we're going to have people who were on step one who basically know the basic beginning, as everyone knows, to the fact that we have people who are ready for stage 5 who are master teachers and ready for that flipped environment and to move forward on that front. Some of the interesting things that we evaluated, as we mentioned earlier, was just what can we get in. I do know that it's just a difficult place for us to be right now in terms of supply chain issues and things on that front of what can get in. And so, like I said, that really drove our mentality on that. We did do as much training as we could virtually. That's kind of funny we mentioned that. It's obviously how everything will have to take place now is virtual in a hybrid environment, but it actually worked quite well. Teachers were receptive, and I say a lot of them were scared, but they were very receptive to train along the way. One big project Jafera is working on now is we're currently in the middle of a 2,000 classroom hybrid flipped model in Oklahoma City Public Schools. Oklahoma City is making the choice to leave, say, the teaching wall environment, where most schools are going to that teaching wall where the classroom's uniform, everything's in the same spot, everything is just from one to one, where teacher can take their laptop, plug in one room, walk to the other. That method is actually no longer being employed in this district due to hybrid technologies. Their presentation models and display content are all being done on carts, including the panels themselves. And so every panel in this district is going to be put on a mobile cart, height adjustable, to go room to room and be able to float back and forth. It is definitely a different model. but honestly, it seems to work very well so far. We're 2 weeks in, and as unfortunate as it is, there's been exposures and schools closing and grades going home and whatnot. This model has been able to flip and adjust to keep students engaged, as well as teachers having the right tools wherever they may be within that district, whether they're at home, either they're isolated in the building itself, or they're in the regular classroom setting. They all have the same tools to make that happen. I know there was a bunch of information and probably a different way of looking at things. I'd really love to have any questions about how this district may be pulling this off with basically being mobile wherever they go.
Well,
any-
Eric,
Sure.
I'll jump in there too, because I know there's going to
Yeah.
be questions coming in too. But one of the things that I heard you say is this idea for flexibility and mobility, and the lesson that I have learned on nonstop repeat throughout the pandemic is that we have to be flexible, and there are no two learning experiences that are exactly the same. Every time I set up, for those of you who we have not met, just so you know, I'm a teacher by trade. And so for every learning experience that I set up, I have a little bit of a unique seating arrangement. I have a little bit of a unique floor plan for how I want to do that. And having that stuff that's on carts, and I can move this here and I can separate there and I can create a center over there, and then I can do this other experience over here. That kind of flexibility is exactly the kind of flexibility that we have to have right now with social distancing, and with also just pedagogical approaches in terms of, how we want to have the layout of the room match the learning experience. I think those are the critical pieces that that we cannot forget about as we're doing these product redesigns and these revamps of different spaces and stuff. Those are things that are so important for us to keep in mind.
Sure. I think you're exactly right. And the theme for most every district I've been into is grace during this term, have grace, everybody.
Yes.
But I have to kind of disagree that technology team does not get to have the gift of grace, because we're the utility. We must always be working when the light switch turns on. We don't have the option to have that. So I agree with you, Josh, 100%. Flexibility is key, and it does put a strain on us as well. But at the same time, I know that we're the polished leaders that we need to be and with the best solutions we can. So I agree.
Well, speaking of solutions, I know we have two partners on. Both of them bring really interesting technologies to the table. And just so you know, in case you're just coming in, we're really talking about hybrid learning environments in two ways. Number one is having all the right technology in place. Number two is having the right empowerment for teachers in place. So in case you're coming into this conversation, we're still kind of on the technical part of it. As we wrap up the conversation, I'll speak to a little bit more on the teacher empowerment piece. Carl, I'm kind of looking at on my Zoom window. You're on the top, so I'm going to go to you first. I know that AVer has been deeply concerned about this since way before the pandemic. This is something that you guys have been advocating for and talking about. I know the pandemic kind of puts a magnifying glass under some of the work that you guys are doing. Would you mind to take a couple of minutes and share some of the technologies that you guys are passionate about and where you think that these technologies might fit in the hybrid learning environment?
Yeah, and I like the way that you said it, because I mean, the pandemic definitely leapfrogged a lot of the decisions that we're making when it comes to technology, and especially with distance learning. I mean, if we were to give an example of our product that we're using right now, one video bar that we use, which is called the VB130. It's a very lightweight, small video bar that's actually made for dynamic environments. As an example, I usually have right now I'm in a living room of my house because, well, I live in California and we're still sheltered in place a little bit here. My company hasn't opened up. And so for me, working out of my home office and doing a lot of webinars, meetings, teaching, usually I work out of it's my master bedroom closet that I turned into a focus room. But for today, I kind of moved it out to the living room. Today, as an example, all of my kids are starting school. They're all doing their iReady test right now. And so we have 3 different, from high school level to 6th grade. I've got 3 kids in here that are trying to join remote classes and or testing. And so we have we have 4 live video streams going on at the same time with different, luckily I work in technology, so I'm able to give them cameras, give them headsets and stuff like that. But for instance, right now, I mean, I don't know if you could hear it, but me doing this webinar, which I think is very important because There's a great group to work with. There's a lot going on outside of my range of this field of view because I got audio fencing on. If you notice that little icon right there, my son who's out in the kitchen right now, kind of doing things and banging pots and stuff like that, you guys can't hear it because it's negated with that audio fence. And so if we were to have teachers kind of, being in a room environment where they would have a lot of distractions for the outside noise for the remote participants, they'll be negated out. Just to give you guys a little example, I'm going to talk right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12. You probably heard my count negate out or go away. And so that kind of helps out with teachers being comfortable, being able to present and not have to worry about distractions going outside. Now, this little video bar that we have has kind of embedded lighting so it can illuminate people's faces as they go on. Actually, I'm going to change my my camera because I got 2 cameras going on right now. But to kind of give you a little example as far as what's happening there, this video bar is really small. It's about less than a foot. I was able to throw it in my backpack, go and have meetings at remote places. It's got 5 microphone arrays built in within it, so I could talk and actually move away up to like 15 feet away. If I were to change the setting on here, and if you wanted to get a good view of the camera itself, you would notice I'm going to turn off the audio fencing, but with this camera, it's got a really wide field of view, so I could sit up here right on a whiteboard or work on an interactive panel. But the wide field of view enables teachers to be more dynamic with their teaching. It will do automatic framing, all the AI features, but in a small compact area, so you can be dynamic. You can put it in a classroom, above or below a TV, mount it on the wall, and kind of just be fluid on how you want to do things. Now, this is one product that we came out with to help teachers for remote learning, but we got other products out there that we've been noticing have been taken off, the document cameras and other things of that nature.
Right. Well, and it's a great image too. I think that's important. I'm a firm believer that there's research out there that shows the importance of the student being able to connect, have eye contact with the educator as they're speaking, and also just having a little bit of production quality, a little bit of production value, so that the students have a great experience on their end. And no, I'm not talking about doing a Hollywood movie production. What I'm talking about is just having the right tools in place so that your audience feels very connected and feels like in a similar way that they would inside the classroom. So yeah,
meeting fatigue is a big thing. I mean, meeting fatigue. I was going to say meeting fatigue or being on a video call is a real thing. I mean, as I was looking at my daughter right now, going through her test and doing her iReady for so long, she was sitting, nice and good posture. By the end of it, she was just slouched down like this. And if you're straining to see the person on the far end and or to hear them, you're going to get meeting fatigue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's very interesting. Tim, I know you guys are working on this as well. Can you come on and share some thoughts about what's happening from Newline?
I can. Stand by. Here it comes. There we go. I told you you'd see me. You weren't missing much though, obviously. But anyway, so here we are. And listen, I'm very glad that we're talking about these things. And in fact, as I was looking at my screen, I actually saw someone pop a question into the chat. How do you train a teacher to do the hybrid teaching? I mean, how do you make that happen? And that's an excellent question. That's kind of a high level question as it goes. That's not actually the question I'm going to answer here in this case, but I am very glad that was asked, because in my day-to-day job, the thing that I deal with is, like I said, right, I wear a couple of hats, but my main job is to provide teachers the guidance they need, teachers who are using our interactive displays, so that they recognize where the tools are and what those tools will do, so they can make informed decisions on how they are going to use that tool to get their students the content that they need. And it really is very straightforward, because our products are very straightforward. But as we were living through pandemic universe, there were in fact two specific, what I call trap doors, that would come up every time, every session. And it got to the point where what I would do is, before we even got to that point, I would bring it up myself and I would say, hey, Raise your hand if this has ever happened to you. And then I would describe it, and invariably I get 6 teachers coming off mute going, yes, Tim, that's exactly what's happening. Help me. What's going on here? Because obviously, you know, we talk about the high level things in terms of what this looks like and what kind of gear you're supposed to have and all that other jazz. But really, when you distill it down, it's nuts and bolts. You got people in the seats and eyes staring at you or staring at a screen or staring somewhere anyway, right? How can you execute on this so that not only does your hybrid environment work, but you can avoid some of the things that can be a pitfall, that can be a trapdoor, as I like to call it. And so hopefully, whatever product you guys are using, we certainly hope that it has Newline's label on it. But what I'm about to describe is relevant to virtually whatever interactive display you have in your space. And if you are running a hybrid environment where you got your roomers and your zoomers, I didn't make that up. I got that from a teacher, but I love it so much I use it. So you got your roomers and you got your zoomers. So you got the kids in the room and you got the kids out there. So you're herding all the cats at one time, but they're not all in the same place. And here are 2 trap doors that you want to avoid. So here's the first one. The first one is, hey, Tim, let's say I'm on the whiteboard and I'm scribbling something on the whiteboard, and it ultimately ends up being the same thing. Or I'm on my computer and I bring up a piece of content from someplace and I bring up the panel's annotation tools, like I'm going to do here, and we choose color and thickness, like we always do. And I'm writing and I'm scribbling and I'm doing my thing. And my kids in the room are fine because they can see what's going on. But then what will happen is my Zoomers will start raising their hands and go, oh, excuse me, Mr. Garber, I can't see what you're doing. Did you write something? I can't see what's happening on my screen. It's like, oh no, what's going on? What's going on? So my kids in the room, they can see when I write something on the panel, but my Zoomers, they can't see what's happening. This is a very, very common trap door. And the answer, in terms of what's happening, many of you probably already know the answer because maybe you ran into this to yourself, but the answer is actually very straightforward because it's recognizing that when we are running a hybrid environment, how are we actually doing that? The main thing that we're doing is we're using some sort of unified collaboration system, software, whether it be Zoom or Teams or Google Meet or whatever you're standardized on. The way that you are making that happen is not just about the hardware that you have connected, but about the software that you use to communicate and share with your Zoomers, as we like to call them. And because that's happening, the thing that we have to recognize is, and this is kind of the way that I ask, and so when I set the scenario, I do that and I say, okay, so where is Zoom? And I use Zoom as the generic example for this. Where is Zoom coming from? Is it coming from the panel? Or is it coming from your connected source, the computer that is actually connected to the panel? And the answer is, well, so that's coming from the computer. And that is correct. Okay, so we're zooming from the computer. And then these annotation tools, or if we're talking about the whiteboard that's embedded in the panel, well, where is that coming from? Well, I just said it. It's coming from the panel. Hello. So we're zooming from the computer and we have annotation tools that we're using, and those are actually embedded in the panel itself. They have nothing to do with the computer. They have nothing to do with Zoom. They have nothing to do with anything. They're actually the panel. They lay on top, right? That's where the term overlay comes from. So Zoom, Google Meet, those programs, they're not going to see this. They're not going to see this. So when I'm coaching teachers, when I'm coaching them to utilize tools with their content, annotation tools with their content, I coach them to use tools that actually come from the computer side. Then I show them some examples of how to do that, whether we're talking about tools that are embedded inside of a program, like if you're a Microsoft school as opposed to a Google school, you've got tools inside of Microsoft Office. We talk about that. Or if you are a Google school, hey, we've got there are web portals out there. I happen to endorse one that's known as Cami, which you may be familiar with. So that's what I do is I coach them to rely more when they're running the hybrid scenario, rely more on the computer-based tools than the panel tools. That's the first trapdoor that we want to avoid when we're running our hybrid environment, so that we make sure that all of our cats can actually follow along, that we're all on the same page. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is a little bit shorter, so real quick, because wireless casting obviously is a very big deal. Teachers love the ability to be untethered from their panels. And so, yes, of course, we have our own wireless casting embedded in our panels, which again, the number of solutions have that. And it's nice because teachers can do this, and students, when they're one-to-one with iPads or Chromebooks or whatever, they can get involved too. And they can, Johnny can be at his desk and we can see Johnny's project because he casted the panel. We let him in and he didn't have to leave his desk to do that. So yeah, there are a number of things to love about this. But again, this is where I caution teachers, because I see this before. It's like, oh, well, then I can do this wireless casting thing and I don't have to do Google Meet, or I don't have to do Zoom, or well, hold on a second, because remember what we're trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish here is it's about sharing, but it's also about communication. And wireless casting has no communication. It is for screen share. So I try and steer teachers away from it. It's like, listen, when you got remote students, if there's any kind of a distance learning piece, whether it's straight up or whether it's part of a hybrid scenario, you are running your UC, you're running Zoom, you're running Google Meet, because that's the whole package. It's sharing things and communicating, whereas this is just sharing things. There's no communication involved. So this is the second trap door that I talk about with them to kind of mitigate some of that and help steer them in the right direction, so that all the other thousands of things they have to worry about when they've got their roomers and their Zoomers, at least knowing that there are trap doors they can fall through. And that's part of the coaching that I provide. And it's something that, again, it came up every day, not just about the tools that you use, but about the direction that you take them so that everybody can be on the same page.
I love that, Tim. Very good. Very good stuff. So yeah, I mean, I know that there's going to be some questions that are coming in. I know that there's already one question from Monica. And what I will say, and as an answer to that question, Monica, and this is probably, for everyone on the call to some extent, is it's kind of the thing that Tim was saying. I started the webinar by saying this too. Having these technologies in place is absolutely essential. I feel like for us to be effective in the hybrid classroom, it's going to require the right web camera. It's going to require the panel. It's going to require the software, all that. You got to have it. But if you have all of those tools and you haven't taken a minute to invest in your people, you are, I believe this to the bottom of my heart, you are wasting your money. And what that means is, if you can find a way to partner with either bundling in the training support with, if you buy your stuff from Trafera, if you bundle in a couple of training support days with that purchase, we can take care of you. But even if you're not buying from us, if you are coordinating with your professional development team, if you're coordinating with the other folks that are involved in training and educator empowerment, then you can make sure, you can guarantee that technology is not going to be collecting dust, and it's going to be used in the most effective way. And I'm teaching all day, every day. I've got my setup here where I'm standing at the board. I've got a Newline board here, and then I've got a AVer camera here, and I'm using these technologies all day, every day. But the way that I'm using them and the way that I'm able to switch between these different environments and all of that is because someone came along at some point and empowered me and gave me the training that I needed to do it. Otherwise, you can have all of this stuff, and I just don't think that we're going to connect with our students in the way that they deserve. And I'll give you one more answer to that question, Monica. There is a book that I have come to live by, and it's called the Distance Learning Playbook. Trafera provides a lot of professional development on classroom management for the distant learning environment or the hybrid environment. Because when I learned my classroom, I took a classroom management class in 2005, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but I can tell you back in 2005, we were not talking about distance learning, and we surely weren't talking about one-to-one technologies. The things that I prepared myself for were like seating charts and bullying and all those things. I mean, those are the things I learned in classroom management class. It wasn't this kind of thing. And so, number one, I don't have any reason to believe that the vast majority of our educators are going to be great at distance learning classroom management or classroom management that's heavily saturated with technology. And because of that, I purchased this book on Amazon. We don't sell this. I have nothing to do with this book whatsoever. So I'm not trying to pitch you on something. But what I can tell you is I sat around for a long time wondering when someone was going to create a playbook for distance learning. And that thing right there has been a sweetheart. It's written by people you already know, like John Hattie and Nancy Fry, Douglas Fitcher. These are just great authors that you already know. And there's tons of stuff in there about setting up your home classroom environment and creating a schedule for yourself. The book's really good, but we also do a lot of training through the book. That's a unselfish plug there for myself and for the training that we do and the whole team on at Trafera. Any other questions before we? I know I have a poll. I want to do the poll. I want to make sure that we've connected with everybody that way too. But I want to just give a second before we close this out to make sure we've got all the questions. Nobody? I'm watching the chat while we're at it too. Okay. Good. Okay, let's do this. Let's get some gift cards going. I think we're going to do that through this poll. So yeah, there's some questions there. Somebody give me a head nod or a thumbs up if you're seeing those questions. All right, sweet. So yeah, take a minute, complete that poll. We will be sending you Starbucks. This is our, isn't that guy sweet? That's Tom. Someone made a joke that because of our name being Trafera, we should have a mascot called the Triceratops. And it was a joke in a meeting until it wasn't a joke. Now it's our real mascot. I keep this here for motivation. If I'm ever feeling down, got my Triceratops. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to complete your poll. Make sure you do that. Other than that, thank you so much for joining. We love seeing you guys. We're going to be back. We have 1 million webinars coming up on a bunch of different topics, a bunch of fun stuff. Yeah, thank you, Susan. Thank you for being here. Bye, everyone. Happy Starbucks. Happy distant learning. My email address, I'm going to put it in the chat in case you want support on training your people. It's real easy. Josh.ratliff@trafera.com. You're welcome, Daniel. Thanks for being here. I'm leaving the poll up for a minute, Kate. Looks like people are still working on it now. So ordering the book now. Yeah, you won't be disappointed. You will not be disappointed at all. Thank you, Danny. Oh, I see what you did there, Ben. Great job, Tim, Carl, and Eric. You're welcome, Ben.
And I got second place.
I don't, oh, there we go. Danny came through for me. Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to close out the poll and I am going to close out the meeting itself. Carl, Eric, Tim, Kate, Ben, everyone, thank you all so much. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you in person.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Thank you
Josh.
very much.
I love the tech, Carl and Tim. I might send you an email because the dual casting thing is, I need to be able to do that.
Oh, my webinar look. Yeah, you and I talked about that a little bit, but I'll get you the shopping list. So you have the
Okay.
shopping list. Okay.
Yeah, and Carl, really interesting stuff with the bar and the lights on it. I think that's fascinating. So interesting
Good deal.
stuff.
Got to
All
get
right.
you one.
Bye, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us.
Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
All right, see you later.